What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com and ArrowheadAddict.com. I'm here with my friend Michael Darcy to preview this Week 1 Kansas City Chiefs versus Arizona Cardinals game. And I'm live streaming this one. Not sure how many people are going to get tonight, considering it is almost 10:30. But maybe some of you just got done watching college football. Maybe your team did really well.
Chalk, baby.
Maybe your team did really terrible. And now you're relaxed. You can listen to us preview tomorrow's game because no matter how your team did this Saturday, guess what? We got Chiefs football tomorrow. So there's always light at the end of the tunnel. But Michael, since I have you on and you're my guest, I'm going to ask you, what are your initial thoughts heading into this matchup this weekend with the Cardinals?
That's a good question. So first of all, I want to say I'm on cloud nine. Jayhawks got the dub earlier tonight. Wasn't expecting it. And if the Chiefs do what I think they can do tomorrow, it's going to be a great weekend. But I think that the Chiefs, as you said, what am I looking forward to, or what am I looking at?
Yeah, just your thoughts heading into this matchup, man. How are you feeling?
Gotcha. Honestly, I might be a little too confident. Now, I'm not saying this is a lock or anything like that, but I just think that, Week 1, the Chiefs have dominated that area for so long. Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. I mean, Patrick Mahomes hasn't lost a home opener in his NFL career yet. They always start off really, really quick. The Chiefs are better than the Cardinals, I would say, on paper and in just actuality. But I think that, the Cardinals are without some key players. I just saw their injury report. No Rondale Moore. Zach Ertz is questionable. Byron Murphy Jr., their cornerback, is questionable. And then their other cornerback, I think it's Trayvon Mullen, he's out. So those are some pretty important pieces that are not going to play for Arizona. And Patrick Mahomes is going to attack those weapons. And I think that, our offense just needs to come out and show what we saw in the preseason. They're going to be really, really good. And our defense just has to play towards our offensive strengths, and we'll win this game.
Yeah, real quick, you're cutting out a lot for me. It might help if you turn off your camera. I don't know if that's taking up a lot of your performance or not, but that might work a little bit better. But I was able to hear what you said for the most part. But so I think so.
Okay. Gotcha.
We'll try it. But anyway, so yeah, there's a lot that's happened actually since the last time we talked as far as both of these teams heading into this game. So Andy Reid said on Friday, or was it Thursday? Whichever one. He said that everyone on the active roster is good to go for this game. So the Chiefs have no injuries. Everyone should be participating in this one. The Cardinals, however, from reading their injury report, Rodney Hudson doesn't look like he's going to play. Like I said, Trayvon Mullen is out. J.J. Watt is questionable. Zach Ertz is questionable. Justin Pugh, one of their starting offensive linemen, is questionable. Rondale Moore is out with a hamstring injury. They're already missing DeAndre Hopkins. Byron Murphy might not play. This might be a massacre, if I'm being completely honest. I mean, this is not looking good for the Cardinals because I think a lot of us agree that the Chiefs are still very talented, and a lot of people are overlooking them this year just because they traded away Tyreek Hill, even though they were able to add a lot of depth and talent, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. And I don't know, this has the makings of a Week 1 blowout because I talked to you about it last time, but I don't like the vibe surrounding this Arizona Cardinals team. They had a really weird offseason. It seems like the Cardinals organization isn't fully invested in Cliff Kingsbury as a head coach. Kyler Murray had a dispute with the front office this offseason, and they had a coach that got arrested for domestic violence. I mean, I don't like anything about this Cardinals team at all, and I think this has the makings of a Week 1 blowout.
It definitely could, and I think that the Cardinals have always been that team that, it's kind of borderline. They might make the playoffs, they might not, but the Chiefs just have a history of starting off so quickly that the Cardinals might be a good team 7-8 weeks from now when they've kind of settled in. But week one, there is nobody better than the Chiefs. And I think that the injury advantage, so to speak, like the Chiefs don't have 4 or 5 of crucial players not playing in this game. And I think the game plan, as far as that goes, the Chiefs are going to have a better game plan because Andy Reid's just the better head coach. And Kyler Murray did get paid this offseason, but I'm questioning really his ability to lead that team over the Chiefs and specifically beat Patrick Mahomes. You know, as much as we talk about offense versus defense, lines versus lines, it really comes down to the quarterbacks, because if your quarterback isn't as good as the other quarterback, 99% of the time, it doesn't really matter how good the team is. The quarterback is going to end up prevailing. And I think that, you know, if you look at Kyler Murray, he's not a bad quarterback. I would say he's top 10. Where he falls in the top 10 range, I'm not really sure. But I think that when you're looking at this purely from a quarterback battle, which quarterback's going to make more plays? Which quarterback is going to put his team in better situations to win? Which quarterback is going to make maybe one more play to make or to seal the game? And I personally think that's going to be Pat in this game. Not saying Kyler's a bad quarterback, but you know, if this is a game that we need, if this is a game in which the quarterback determines who wins, it's going to be Pat.
Yeah, I agree. And I just, especially with the Cardinals injuries, I still think, and with all the turnover the Chiefs had this offseason, I still think there's a big talent discrepancy between both teams. And you mentioned it, one with quarterback. I'm taking Patrick Mahomes over Kyler Murray, obviously, but you're looking at receivers. Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Sky Moore, McCole Hardman. You know, look what the Cardinals got. Rondale Moore's not playing. DeAndre Hopkins isn't playing. How about offensive line? I think we can comfortably take the Chiefs' offensive line over the Cardinals' offensive line. Running backs, I mean, might be a wash. Maybe the edge goes to the Chiefs because of the depth that they have. Defensive back, with the injuries that the Cardinals have, I'd go with the Chiefs secondary. I'd go with the Chiefs pass rush as well, especially if J.J. Watt isn't playing in this game. I think there's a big talent discrepancy. Even if everyone was healthy for both teams, I like what the Chiefs have up and down the roster on paper. But I got a question for you, Michael, since we're talking about a little bit, or we mentioned some of the turnover the Chiefs had this offseason at all these positions. Which position group specifically are you most excited to watch this Sunday? A position you might be watching for, or maybe even a certain player, a newcomer, perhaps.
Oh, honestly, I've got so many answers for that because, you know, I said this in my preview video that I just put up a couple of hours ago. Maybe it was a different day. I mean, I feel like I've been up for 24 hours, but I was talking about some of the things that I'll be looking for. And I think that obviously the Chiefs wide receiver core is going to be something to look at. But I think that this is one of the more exciting Chiefs teams that we've had, just purely based on the fact that we don't know what we're going to get. Like we have so much turnover at basically every position that everything is new. Everything is a question mark, and that just leads towards more anticipation on what could be. I honestly, as much as I'm excited to watch the Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver core, I'm more excited to watch our linebackers and DBs. I think that, you know, for the first time in a long time, we have a youth movement in the secondary and a youth movement in the linebacking core. And I think that we're actually going to have speed in that area. So our defensive back group and our linebackers is what I'm going to be watching for tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think there's a bad answer to this question. Personally, I am interested to see this new look pass rush versus the Arizona Cardinals. Now, I had written an article for Arrowhead Addict. I think it's supposed to come out tomorrow before the game. I'll have to double check on that. But I was talking about how this is going to be a good first test for the Chiefs pass rush versus the Cardinals. Now, not so much, because I wrote that article under the assumption that the Cardinals wouldn't have this many injuries along the offensive line, because like they'd still had Rodney Hudson, who's still one of the best centers in the NFL. He's probably not playing in this game. You know, Justin Pugh, questionable. now the Cardinals weren't a world beater offensive line even before those injuries, but they were good enough to where they would be a good measuring stick for the Chiefs pass rush early on. Because if you guys can remember back to last year, the Chiefs pass rush was absolutely awful. They couldn't even generate pressure against, even bad opponents. So this is going to be a good first test for the new look pass rush. I'm interested to see how much Karlaftis plays, what he's able to do. Mike Dana's probably going to be the starter because that's Spag's MO, but I want to see a Karlaftis play a lot. Frank Clark, he was apparently sick this week, which is a weekly thing with him. But if he's able to play, I wonder how much of the snaps will go to him and or Carlos Dunlap. And then on the interior, I'm interested to see if Colin Saunders or Tershawn Wharton, somebody on the interior, has finally made the leap next to Chris Jones, because I'm tired of seeing Chris Jones have to do all the heavy lifting for this pass rush over the past several years.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that's interesting. And I think it was the unofficial depth chart, but
Yeah.
I saw Mike Dana over George Karlaftis. And if that is the case, that is absolutely unacceptable. And I think
disagree.
Tomorrow, if we see George Karlaftis behind Mike Dana at starting defensive end, I'd kind of be upset.
Yeah, I would. I understand it because starter doesn't necessarily mean he'll be playing a majority of the snaps. And Mike Dana's maybe that kind of guy you would like to have on first and second down to stop the run, maybe. But George Karlaftis needs to be getting the majority of those snaps.
What'd you draft him to do? You know what I mean? Like the Chiefs. Right. And if Mike Dana was the problem solver, why even draft Karlaftis in the first place? Like, if you were so confident that he was going to be your starter, I mean, the Chiefs had this mentality last year, and it's why their defensive end group was one of the worst in the NFL.
Yeah, no, Mike Dana's a fine player, don't get me wrong, but he's not a starting defensive end. He's a great rotation guy, a great depth guy. And we saw last year when the Chiefs tried to lean on him early in the season, it's like, hey, Mike Dana's not it. He's a fine player, but he's not that guy. But there's a lot of players like that this team held on to for many years. And I was considering writing an article on this, but Spags is going to have to be forced to play a lot of these rookies because the Chiefs brought in a lot of rookies on defense, a lot of talented rookies, and they didn't bring in too many veteran guys that would have clogged those positions. So Spags is going to be forced to play rookies this year. Trent McDuffie, he's going to have to play. Brian Cook, he's going to have to play. So Leo Chenal as well, he's going to have to play. So Spags, I know he has his MO. I know he has his guys that he likes, but at some point he has to play the talent over, the veteran, the experience, the guy that knows where to be. He's got to take the lumps of playing these talented rookies because they raise the ceiling of this defense exponentially.
Yeah, and I will say there is one good aspect into clearing house. I feel like the Chiefs might have those guys.
Sorry, were you talking? Or
yeah,
are you cutting out?
Can you hear me?
Oh, there you go. You came back.
Gotcha.
No, you cut out for a second, but you're back now.
One thing that I was saying is that the nice thing about clearing house is that, you get rid of the guys that were liabilities. And while the rookies might not play a ton this year, I don't think that the guys that they would play over the rookies would be as bad as the guys that you played over the young guys last year.
Yeah, are you talking about some of the other newcomers that are veterans, like Deion Bush type?
Yeah,
is that what you're trying to say?
I don't think that they are they're not as bad as Sorensen, and our linebackers aren't as bad as Neiman was last year, and so you've upgraded at least in that position too.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I just said one in Deion Bush. Deion Bush, he is a fine fourth safety. He flashed for the Bears last year. He had a huge hit in preseason, and I was impressed by him. He's a guy that okay, you can put on the field and he's not embarrassingly bad. The Chiefs had too many guys where if you put them on the field, they were embarrassingly bad. Dan Sorensen was by every metric, one of the worst safeties in football last year. And there were games in which he was playing 90% of the defensive snaps.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. But thankfully, we don't have to deal with that anymore. And that's the Saints' problem, which, by the way, I maybe you tweeted this out. The Saints might have Dan Sorensen and Tyrann Mathieu as their starting safeties.
Yeah, no, there was the possibility of that happening because they traded off Chauncey Gardner Johnson, and then Marcus May, their other free agent safety signing, he got arrested for like battery or assault with a firearm, something like that. Like that's serious stuff. And I was like, hold on a minute, looking at this depth chart, are Sorensen and Matthews slated to start for the Saints?
You can't take them. You can't separate them. It's a package deal.
No.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's poetic, honestly.
And
But
I honestly think that our safety group, dare I say, is better than it was last year
no,
because
I think it is. I think the ceiling's much higher. I will say that
exactly.
the ceiling is much higher.
And I love Tyrann Mathieu. He's one of my favorites. I think that he set the tone and changed the culture. And really, we wouldn't be where we're at right now without Tyrann Mathieu. But I also think that towards the end of the era which Tyrann Mathieu was in, he got kind of toxic towards the fans and he didn't want to hit anybody. And I think Justin Reed is the polar opposite of that, where he's great with the fans. He wants to take a guy's head off. He's got great football IQ. Not saying that Tyrann Mathieu doesn't, but I just think that, the Chiefs, when they made some of the tough decisions that they did make in the offseason, didn't do it blindly. They knew that they could get somebody to replace Tyrann Mathieu, and yet we've yet to see what he can do on the football field in a regular season game. I would say that so far that signing has worked out for the best.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think Justin Reed, he's younger, he's faster, he wants to hit. That's not something we could say about Tyrann Mathieu last year. And no disrespect to the guy, because like you said, Michael, I love Tyrann Mathieu. I have his jersey. I appreciate everything he did for this team. But you just have to know when it's time to move on. And the Chiefs front office knew that it was time to move on. And I applaud them for doing that. But I don't want this to turn too much into talking about last year's team and last year's players, because we talked about that all offseason. But
Yes.
what I do want to talk about is Patrick Mahomes, because I feel like, a lot of people are, well, the disrespect is at an all-time high. Would you agree with that, Michael?
Honestly, maybe it is, and I just have failed to realize it. I've kind of just stopped paying attention because I feel like hating on Patrick Mahomes is just something that people do every single offseason because it boosts ratings and people click on that stuff. I feel like he got truly
Yeah.
disrespected maybe a couple years ago, and it was bad. Like when he wasn't number one in the NFL top 100 for like 2 or 3 years in a row, it was like, okay. I mean, maybe it's. I honestly think that he's getting slept on just because of the division, and the division's good. It's better than it's ever been, but I still think that Patrick Mahomes is still, he's under the radar right now. And it's crazy that I'm saying that, and he is getting disrespected, but I think that part of my logic with just kind of not really paying attention is my thought process is, oh, Pat's going to prove us wrong or prove them wrong. Pat's going to do it. Like he's done it every single year, and he's motivated by that AFC Championship game loss, and he's got an entire new set of toys to play with. I think this is going to be a great season from Pat.
Well, so in a way, I have almost become annoyed with Chiefs fans being insecure about Patrick Mahomes in a way where anytime any other quarterback is brought up or there's a conversation about top quarterbacks in the league and Patrick Mahomes isn't number one in something, Chiefs fans feel the need to tweet about it and say, hey, look at this disrespect. And it's like, just, and like you said, a lot of them, they do it for clicks and all that. But like, I see some of this stuff. Like there was a top 10 most accurate quarterbacks list, and I don't remember where it came from, but they didn't even have Patrick Mahomes in the top 10 most accurate quarterbacks. There's so much talk about every other team besides the Chiefs winning the division this year, potentially, all the hype. And here's the thing. Look, Josh Allen is a good quarterback. I think we can all agree on that.
Yes.
On Thursday night against the Rams, though, I thought he had a all right game. I didn't think he was spectacular. I didn't think he was bad. He threw a couple interceptions. He had a couple touchdowns. He was good enough for the Bills to win that game. I also think the Rams sucked more than the Bills were that good. But I remember after that game, people were like, oh my gosh, Josh Allen, he's just unstoppable right now. Look at this guy. Oh, number one quarterback in the league. And I'm like, are we watching the same game?
It's ridiculous. And to go back to that top 10 most accurate passers, I looked at that list and just immediately just kind of laughed because Tom Brady wasn't in it. Aaron Rodgers wasn't in it. Pat wasn't in it. So when you don't have three of the most accurate quarterbacks, I would argue in NFL history, not in that list, it's not valid. And I think that that's something that I've learned too. Don't take criticism or don't take someone else's rankings that doesn't have any merit to their name and doesn't have any reason that you should listen to them. Like at the end of the day, I could say that Mizzou football sucks and I might be
Oh,
right.
come on. You didn't have to go there.
I might be right, but why would you listen to me? I'm a KU football fan. Like it doesn't make sense.
You did not have to go there, but I will also highlight this comment by Slim is Chillin'. He says, "Do you feel the perceived disrespect is exaggerated?" And that's kind of what I was prefacing what I was saying about him, the disrespect being at an all-time high. I was trying to preface it with saying, "Look, like I think some of it does get a little blown out of proportion." Because there are other people like Bill Simmons and Peter Schrager on the Bill Simmons podcast. They picked the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, and they were talking about how they feel like the Chiefs are a little bit slept on, and there's like a 2022 Warriors vibe where it kind of feels like everyone forgot about them, but they've retooled with the right guys to where like they can still be really scary. And I found that point really interesting because there are a lot of parallels between the 2022 Golden State Warriors in basketball and the 2022 Kansas City Chiefs. You know, that they still have that guy. The Warriors had Steph Curry, and, you know, they moved, you know, KD left and Klay Thompson. He wasn't the same guy after injury, but they retooled by bringing in guys like Jordan Poole through the draft, and they built with youth again. And the Chiefs kind of took that same approach this offseason, and now you see they got guys like Brian Cook that we're really excited about, or Sky Moore. And it does feel like they're a little bit forgotten about, and they're about to go scorched earth this year, and nobody realizes it.
And I've been on this for the longest time that if you have that guy, if you have the Steph Curry of football and you have Patrick Mahomes, you're going to have a shot to win every single year. Like the Warriors, they were out of it for a couple of years, but you knew when they had Steph healthy and Clay came back, they were going to be in contention. And that's kind of exactly what I feel like about the Chiefs, that as long as you have Mahomes and Reed and Kelsey, you're going to have a chance to go deep in the postseason. And I think that people really are blowing out of proportion the division. I think the division's good, but I think that people need to understand that one of the teams in the division is just not going to live up to expectations. And it might be more than one. I don't think the Broncos are going to be this powerhouse that a lot of people think that they're going to be. I mean, Russell Wilson was mediocre last year. Granted, he was hurt, but he was mediocre last year.
He's definitely on the decline.
Yeah, the Chargers can't win important games, and the Raiders last year were, I think, 7-0 in like one possession games, but that's going to fall. Like they're not going to continue to keep winning games by that closest of margin. So yeah, they did upgrade, but the Chiefs took the approach of we're going to build up this team with younger talent, and you guys can still throw everything in your power at trying to stop us, but we still have 15. We still have the best player on the planet. And I think that, you know, the NBA, kind of to go back to the comparison, the NBA has a lot of good teams, especially this year, but they weren't as good as the Warriors. And I think that's going to be what happens with the Chiefs. Like there's going to be a lot of good teams, but they're not better than the Chiefs.
Yeah. And I mean, I think an important thing to acknowledge is that what makes a lot of these other teams besides the Chiefs sexy picks for like national analysts and stuff like that is because of what they did this offseason and how, you know, they went all in. Like the Chargers, they went all in. You know, acquiring Khalil Mack and signing J.C. Jackson, the Broncos, Russell Wilson. They brought in, what is it? Who was the pass rusher they brought in that played for the Cowboys? Is it Gregory?
I'm trying to think. Gregory?
Yeah, Randy Gregory. Yeah. But you get my point. So it's important to acknowledge that not all of these moves work out. And that goes for the Chiefs too. Like, guys, the Chiefs had free agent signings this offseason, and they had draft picks this offseason. So not all of them are going to work out. I don't know who, and I'm not like trying to point anyone out or anything, but like guys, there's going to be some of the moves that Chiefs made this offseason that simply aren't going to work out. It happens every single year. Same goes for the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Raiders. I mean, and Bills too. This doesn't just go for the division; it goes for everybody. Like Von Miller could end up declining all of a sudden midway through the season, and he's just not the same guy. I mean, he's getting to that age. Or like the Chargers, we've already seen J.C. Jackson's not playing in their Week 1 game. He's already got injury stuff going on. Not all of these moves are going to work out, and that's things that can level the playing field and put the Chiefs right back on top again, is because it doesn't work out. And also, like, I don't know if I trust Brandon Staley as a head coach, because when the Chargers hired him, he was supposed to be this defensive-minded guy, and the Chargers had one of the worst defenses in the league last year. They couldn't win close games. Some of the games they lost were because Brandon Staley was too analytical, and he ended up costing the Chargers by going for it too much on 4th down or 4th and goal, and it just didn't work out. So there's so many factors that, like, it's not as – that's why you can never just look at these teams on paper and pick the division off that. You got to look at track record, or look at like the Chiefs, like Patrick Mahomes, like he's done this, guys. Like he hasn't lost the division since he's become the Chiefs quarterback. Yeah, they traded Tyreek Hill, but besides that, what is keeping you from picking Mahomes to win the division? Because he's shown no reason that he's not going to win it again this year.
Oh yeah. Like until Patrick Mahomes in his Chiefs tenure loses the division, I will not pick against them. I will not. It doesn't make sense, because the Chiefs always, and this even goes back to Andy Reid. When has Andy Reid lost the division with a competent quarterback? I genuinely don't know the answer to that question. Like, if the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, and they game plan, and they have decent talent on the football field, which I would say they have more than decent talent on the football field, they're going to be good enough to win it.
Oh, yeah.
It's ridiculous. I mean, all these people are saying, oh, like the Chiefs are finished. And I was like, did you see what happened this offseason? We almost got better at everything.
Yeah, and the important thing is, too, the Chiefs kind of went away from, like, I complained at the beginning of this offseason when it kind of seemed the front office and the coaches know that this year isn't an all-in year. Now, they're still in Super Bowl contention. They're trying to win, but this was not what you would say was an all-in offseason. It's not Super Bowl or bust for the Chiefs. They're building for the long term. And these other teams, they're trying to play to win right now, and the Chiefs didn't want to get in that fight because, like, I know one of the things that they were able to do with Patrick Mahomes' contract was restructure it where they could push money down the line. Well, they didn't do that this offseason, which was strange because I thought a lot of us, we assumed that was going to happen. Well, it didn't. And I think it means they're saving money so they can be players in free agency again next year, maybe the year after that. Like, they're going to have flexibility. And not only do they have flexibility because of the way they played this offseason, but I think we can all agree that this is the deepest Chiefs team in the Patrick Mahomes era. And I'm confident saying that because, Michael, I know we took the bait last year, especially you and Lucas. Now, I was a little more reserved, but I know you guys were like, yeah, this is the deepest Chiefs team we've ever had. And then the first few weeks of the season happened, and we're like, yeah, no, we were way off. But no, I genuinely feel this time around that they have one of the deepest teams that they've ever had. Like, I love the wide receiver room. Yeah, it doesn't have that legit star, but I love what they have. And they still have Travis Kelce. The offensive line still looks fantastic across the board. The defense has so much more talent. Yeah, you have a lot of new guys, and there's going to be some hardships and stuff like that. But like I said, I would rather have them lose with their best guys on the field, and that's not something that have a lot of depth.
Yeah, and I think that something that took me a while to come to terms with was that the 2022 free agency class wasn't really that good. If the Chiefs were trying to sign an edge rusher, they would have had to pay a guy Von Miller type money, where why would you pay is Von Miller 30? He's got to be up there. Like, why would you pay that guy as much money as you did?
Yeah, he's in his mid-30s.
Yeah.
He's like 33 or 34.
Yeah, it's ridiculous how old he is. And, like, the Buffalo Bills are paying him like he's 25. Like this was what the free agency class
Yeah.
was like in a lot of instances. And I think the Chiefs just kind of came to terms with, we feel like we can get better as a football team without spending hundreds of millions of dollars in free agency over players that, are not worth it. And dare I say that signing Frank Clark and seeing how that turned out a couple of years ago was a good thing, because I think that it taught Brett Veach that you can't just go out and spend money at everybody like you did with Frank Clark, like you did with Sammy Watkins, because that has ramifications, and it ultimately ended up hurting the team in the long run. So I think that, the Chiefs might not
Yeah.
be in win now mode in an NFL sense, but I would argue that they are in a win now mode. They're just doing it differently because they've drafted players and they've spread it out instead of making those two big moves that maybe make you better on paper. But if you put the same product on the field both ways, it's going to give you the same result.
Yeah, and I think that they did a good job as well in their draft approach because they drafted a lot of guys that can contribute in year one. That they might take a couple years to reach the status that they want them to, but Trent McDuffie is someone who's going to be starting for this team. George Karlaftis, he should be starting. It looks like Mike Dana is probably going to start. I don't know, but I mean, they drafted guys. We have Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams. Those are late round guys, day 3 guys that are pushing for playing time in year one. So, I mean, it's not like you said, it's not what you would call the traditional win now approach that most teams take or that most other teams took this offseason, but the Chiefs are
Yeah, you cut out a little bit, but I want to add on to that point. I think the best example of win now mode, and you mentioned it, it's Buffalo. But the difference between Kansas City and Buffalo is if the Chiefs don't win the Super Bowl this year, I'm not like, oh, like they're not going to get back there. If Buffalo doesn't win the bowl this year, then there might be some heavy recoil within that organization because they've been trying for so long to win now, and eventually that's going to catch up with them. And it might not be next year, but Buffalo is kind of all in right now, and they put all of the chips on the table. And once that doesn't work out, or maybe it will work out, but once it doesn't work out, they're going to be screwed because they put everything into this one ship, and maybe they do get a ring. But guess what? They're not building for long-term success because everyone's going to go somewhere else, and they're not going to have enough money to afford anybody else.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. This year definitely feels like Super Bowl or bust for Buffalo, especially after what happened last year. They've definitely made this entire year about, what, we are getting to the Super Bowl. What happened last year, we're pissed off. We want to get back. And you're right. If they don't win it this year, it's going to be hard to see how they're able to get back. Especially, I mean, could you imagine, being in that fan base and if they lose again to the Chiefs this year? Like, I mean, after everything that they did, and the Chiefs still had that flexibility that we're talking about to go out and get even better next offseason. Now, I mean, obviously that's later down the line. It's a hypothetical, but I could not imagine being a Bills fan in that scenario if that happens. And we talk about how Patrick Mahomes' contract looks better by the day. I mean, Josh Allen, he's going to be getting paid more than Patrick Mahomes because Patrick Mahomes got paid first. All these quarterbacks are wanting to reset the market and get more. Russell Wilson's another one we didn't talk about who I can't believe they gave him that, and barely anyone's talking about it. But especially when he hasn't even played it down for Denver. But Josh Allen, like that guy's going to be getting paid more than Patrick Mahomes. And everyone talks about how the Chiefs are roster locked and Mahomes is getting all this money. Oh, that's why the team isn't going to be as good. Have you guys seen what these other teams are giving their quarterbacks? I mean, hell, the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson couldn't even come to a deal. And Lamar Jackson is probably going to get paid a hell of a lot by, if it's not the Ravens, somebody else.
Oh my gosh. And to go back and answer your question about how Bills fans would react if we beat them again in the playoffs, I'll tell you what, I would be insufferable to be around. I would honestly, I would be on Twitter for 36 hours straight. Like the amount, I mean, at that point, like you've swept them 3 straight years and it would just be phenomenal. But I also think that, kind of to tie this back into this season, watching what Buffalo did to the Rams without rushing or blitzing at all is terrifying. I hope that's just a product of the Rams offensive line being so bad, but our offensive line, I think, is more built to the task of stopping that pass rush. But yeah, it's hopefully we don't see that all season, because that would be bad.
Well, it's very interesting you bring that up because a conversation that came out of that game was how a lot of NFL teams now are starting to not blitz star quarterbacks as much, and they're starting to take that approach of dropping 8 into coverage or too high safety. Looks a lot like what the Chiefs got last year, and everyone was talking about it and how they couldn't figure out how to beat, too high safeties, which that was kind of overblown at one point, and eventually they figured it out and the offense was rolling. But there was some truth to it, and a lot of NFL teams, a lot of NFL defenses are starting to go in that direction. And we saw Matt Stafford struggle with it, especially since he didn't have the blocking. Well, the Chiefs are kind of better prepared for this now because, one, they had a whole year of seeing mostly too high safeties last year, and two, they have the offensive line. And not only that, but they've added the depth at receiver that they needed to where, when guys like Kelsey or, well, last year it was Hill getting bracketed, teams weren't scared of Byron Pringle. They weren't scared of Demarcus Robinson. MVS, who has the most 70-plus yard touchdown plays since 2019. Juju Smith-Schuster, who I think is going to have a real big bounce back year. Sky Moore, the rookie. These are guys you kind of have to worry about if you're other NFL defenses.
Of course. And I think that, again, losing Tyreek Hill was very painful. But if you would have told me that we got better, and we filled that production needs elsewhere, and we did it for a not even justifiable amount of money less, like we're not even paying any wide receiver more than $15 million this year, I think that I would take that. And I think that our wide receivers are going to be just fine. And I'm really excited to see what they could do tomorrow to kind of bring that back. And I think that if we see Patrick Mahomes come out and play like he is pissed off about just the world disrespecting him, we're going to win big tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think we will. And I know we've kind of strayed away from talking about the Chiefs-Cardinals game, specifically because I feel like there's not much to talk about it. I think most are picking the Chiefs to win. They're heavily favored in this game. The Cardinals have a laundry list of injuries, and like you and I agreed on, they just had a weird offseason. There's not a good vibe surrounding them. So I got the Chiefs winning tomorrow. But I got 2 questions for you, and then I think we'll probably wrap it up. One, predict Patrick Mahomes' stat line this year, because I know we did it last year with you, Lucas, and I want to hear what you have to say. And secondly, what is your score prediction for tomorrow's game?
Well, that's a good question. Give me 4,600 yards throwing and 40 TDs. He might eclipse both of those things, but I think that Patrick Mahomes has set the bar so incredibly high that a 40 TD and 50 or 4,700 yard passing season is just the status quo, the average. So I think that he's going to have that stat line, and he might not win MVP, but he'll be in the running like he will be every single year. And for my final score tomorrow, I predicted 35-24. The Chiefs are going to get out and they're going to score some points right away. And I think that our defense will be good for about 3 quarters. And then in that final quarter, they'll give up some easy touchdowns, and it might look closer than it actually was. But I have the Chiefs kind of coasting tomorrow, winning by a final score of 35-24.
All right, I like it. So last year when we did this, I went back and listened, but I predicted Mahomes to have another like MVP season where he went for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns because I was having fun with it. And I actually did think he'd have a pretty prolific year behind that new offensive line. Obviously, that didn't happen. But, this offensive line has a year under their belt. I really like what Patrick Mahomes has in the receiving core this year. And you know what? I'm going to do it again. I'm picking Patrick Mahomes to go for at least 5,000 yards passing and 50 touchdowns. And he's going to win MVP. And I got the Chiefs winning tomorrow, 34-17. I think it'll be an easy win. I agree with you, though. I think they'll give up some easy points in the fourth quarter. But Mahomes and the offense will do their thing tomorrow. They're going to, when tomorrow is over, they're going to be one of the top 5 offenses in the NFL to start the season. And I really like what this team has this year. I think tomorrow in particular, Andy Reid having multiple weeks to prepare and everything like that is going to be an easy win. And that's my prediction.
I'm excited, man. Like I still don't think I've let it sink in that football is back tomorrow, but I'm so ready because I mean, the football season's a journey, and this is just going to be one of the steps along the journey. But we got to hit the ground running and start off fast. And I think that the Chiefs' schedule is so difficult that if you can pile these wins at the beginning of the season, like the Chiefs every single year are going to have a chance to put themselves in the position to get the 1 seed. Buffalo is really good this year. The AFC as a whole is really, really good this year. So as long as you can just kind of stay up with them, get that 1 seed, get that bye, let's go win a Super Bowl, man. Like, let's go do it.
Yeah, I mean, I need to see it, especially after last year. All I can see is myself sitting in Arrowhead Stadium, doing and saying absolutely nothing in complete silence as the Bengals celebrated on our field after the AFC Championship game. Like, I can't get that image, that memory out of my head, and I need it cleansed by the Chiefs winning a Super Bowl this year.
Everything from last year would be forgotten. Everything. It's just a glimpse of the past, but they've got to find a way to do that because it was not pretty. But I will say the last time the Chiefs lost an AFC Championship game, they responded pretty well.
Yeah, that's right. That is absolutely true. And it sucks. You don't want to have to say a loss like that can fuel a Super Bowl run because the Chiefs are at the point where it's like, hey, we should be over these heartbreak kind of losses. You should be expected to make and win the Super Bowl. But it's true that a loss like that can fuel a Super Bowl run. And I hope that is the case this year. That's all I got, though. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that we covered everything and more. I mean, we kind of got off the game topic, but to your point, I think that we're just kind of waiting for the final result of this game before everything else starts to just kind of get put into place.
Yeah, absolutely. So with all that being said, Michael, tell the fans where they can find you. And I would have you know that I already have your channel in the description.
Sounds good. As for me, you guys can find me on Instagram. That is KC_Sports Report. Twitter is at KC Sports Report. And I will warn you that if you're not a Kansas Jayhawks fan, at least tonight I wouldn't get on there because it's been a very nice night in which I might have been gloating a little bit. So, but you guys can follow me on Twitter. My YouTube is just KC Sports Report, and you can check me out on my website. That's just kcsportsreport.com. And as for Josh, it's always a pleasure to get on your channel, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, real quick, since you were mentioning your college team before we hop off, I got to say, Mizzou fans, those of you that are Mizzou fans that watch my channel and you're watching this right now, I'm sorry we're an embarrassment, guys. I know. I get it. Today sucked. Today hurt. And the most hurtful part about it is that we could have played a much closer game. Kansas State is not that good. But after today's game, Kansas State and Kansas State fans are going to think they're this great team, and they're really not. Missouri just played awful today, and Missouri has awful quarterback play, which is part of the reason, most of the reason that Kansas State won. Mizzou just doesn't have a quarterback, and I feel sorry for KU fans because now you guys are going to have to hear from K-State about how they're winning the Big 12 this year.
That's all right. Oklahoma will get them. Oklahoma or Baylor will get them. It doesn't matter. And man, at this point, like going to the University of Kansas has made me into a college football fan. And I can tell you that if we beat Duke, and if we win 4 or 5 games this year, Lawrence might get burnt to the ground. And if we miraculously beat Houston next week, come home, beat Duke, start the season off 4-0, we're beating TCU. We're beating another team. We might go bowling. And that's enough unrealistic, Michael, for today.
Well, I never thought I'd say it, but I hope you guys beat K-State this year because
I hate to be that guy. We are going to get blown out. We are going to get blasted. I hate to say that, but just being real, we're going to get destroyed.
I don't know, man. We'll see. I hope the best for you guys, though, because honestly, during this week leading up to the game, I found K-State fans to be a lot more unbearable than KU fans ever have been. especially when it comes to football. Because like for the longest time there, I know I said we're wrapping it up, but screw it. So like I know for the longest time, like KU football fans, they got to a point where it's like, hey, whatever happens is gravy. Like anything good that happens is gravy because like we're used to sucking. And they do. I hate Kansas. I'm a Mizzou fan. It's natural, but I understand the feeling you guys are feeling like right now. I mean, you've sucked for so long and you're finally tasting a little bit of success. You have a new coach. He seems to be winning over the fan base. It's a great time.
Oh, yeah. And, my reaction to that whole thing, like, we might not be good in football, but we have arguably, and I would argue that we have the best college basketball program ever. Like, literally, we have one of the best ever. And we're coming off of a national championship, and K-State fans love to say, "Oh, we beat you guys and we destroy you in football." It's like, dude, they're an average program. They're not like they don't have an elite anything. So,
well, it's great because this week, and I understand they won today. And if there's any K-State fans watching, they're going to talk about it in the comments how they beat us today. But leading up to this game, there were so many conversations, and K-State was talking about themselves like they're a blue blood program. And I had to bring up the Winsipedia site where you can compare your team to any other team in its all-time history.
Yeah.
Well, if you go on there, Mizzou, they blow K-State's program out of the water and everything. Wins, bowl games, bowl appearances, head-to-head matchups, NFL draft picks. And it's like in K-State, they have 0 top 5 finishes ever. It's like, your program is nothing special, and you guys are acting like you're a national championship contender and perennial Big 12 contender, and it's just not the case. And like I said, after today's game, they're going to think that they're a much better team than they are because they had a great day against Missouri. And look, props to them because Missouri played like crap today, but it shouldn't have been that way.
Yeah, I mean, I worked with the K-State fan that was talking about how if they didn't win 9 games this year, they'd be disappointed. And I'm like, where'd that come from? Like,
yeah,
it doesn't make sense. But, I don't know. K-State fans don't make any sense. They're beating a random non-conference opponent in football, and they're chanting FKU. I mean, that just kind of shows you how much real estate we have in their heads.
Absolutely. So I'll go ahead and end it there, though. But with all that being said, make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. And also, I'm probably going to do a post game tomorrow with Hydra. I know he's really been wanting to do those again with me this year. And then, Michael, if we can get Lucas back on, we need to throw it back to Kingdom Crew and talk about the game tomorrow.
Dude, we might have to. It's going to be a late night. I got to drive back to the great city of Lawrence. But if I can, we will definitely hop on and talk about a Chiefs win, hopefully.
Yeah, that I would be super excited if we could do that, especially because I miss Lucas. It's been a while since I've gotten to talk to Lucas. I know you've done a couple things with him recently, but I miss him. So we'll have to get us 3 back together.
For sure.
All right. Well, there you have it, guys. So make sure you check out Michael's stuff. Check out my stuff. It's all going to be in the description. It's a long night. Michael's got to get home. I got to get some sleep before tomorrow. So we will see you all in the next one.